night we were having a conversation about living outside of time. I wondered if you could maybe elaborate on what is outside of time. I mean, what is it to live outside of time?
Well, it's a difficult thing to describe right out of the clear blue.
Well, let's not describe it. Let's. Is there a purpose to living outside of time?
Well, you're not living from your reaction to history. You're living as a result of creation, as a result of the instant, the now. You're bringing forth the action from a new place, from a place that doesn't have a history. So a place that doesn't have a history could be called a new place, couldn't it? If your action, if I called you ugly and your action came out of that statement called ugly, then that would be your history, wouldn't it? And it would be your belief in that word ugly. So your action would then originate in the past, would be history, correct?
Yes.
But if you didn't have a memory, or...
Okay, well, let's go back and discuss what we mean by time. You know, when I ask you the question, most people will think, you know, they think of the clock when you say time. So if you're living outside of time, that means you don't know what time it is. You don't know if it's AM or PM. Is that what you mean?
No, that.
What do you mean by time?
Chronological clock is not called. I mean that. If you're living on this planet and you have engagements, you have appointments, you have different times that, for instance, if you have to be somewhere at 5 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, then you got to be there at 5 o'clock in the morning.
So we're not talking about that
chronological time.
We're not talking about actual chronological time. You're talking about psychological time?
Psychological.
And what is psychological time?
Psychological time is when there is no thought to date your action.
To date my action?
To date your action, to put a date on your action.
What do you mean by that?
Well, going back to my statement of calling someone ugly, if that statement is made, if there's such a thing as ugly, there isn't.
Ugly?
No, that's why I switched it to somebody. In the first place, there's no actual thing called ugly. That's a psychological statement as well. However, if there is such a thing as ugly, then where does that word live?
In the definition of ugly.
Which is in the past. It means to say...
It's something I learned.
Yeah, you got warts and your nose is up in the air and maybe your ears are...
I learned what ugly meant, the word ugly meant
Yes.
after I was born.
Yes, but if you had never ever... This is an example.
It's not something in my genetic makeup.
No, but if you'd never ever heard of the word ugly and someone said you're ugly, you'd say, well, okay. But if you'd heard of the word ugly, then you respond from your history.
Well, how is it we get the idea that someone is ugly anyway?
Well, I mean, we're getting off on it.
I know, but that's interesting. No, it is interesting.
Yes, because I've heard people say, and I guess most notably, I've heard Krishnamurti talk about the beauty of a sunset, or how gorgeous or beautiful it is. And I must tell you, I've never seen anything ugly, and I've never seen anything beautiful either, except in action. I have seen your beauty in its action before, but beauty is not, to me at least, a sunset or a painting or a picture or
nice nose
or a nice nose or even Miss America or Mr. Universe, whatever those things are.
So you're saying you don't see anything beautiful about Miss America?
Right, except the only beauty I've ever seen is in the action of a person, is in the way of being of a person.
The beauty lies in
the actions, in the living of a person, the manner in which.
Is that like saying? People say all the time, you know, your beauty comes from inside.
Exactly.
It's an inner beauty.
And that's what I would say that it is. And also I would say that when people say live from the beauty of your heart, they're meaning to say that internalness that can be beautiful, not I mean, obviously the heart
When
is
you
there.
say internalness can be beautiful, what you mean is what it comes out of that internal,
Exactly.
right?
And if, yes.
You can't see an inner beauty unless it manifests to the outside.
To the outside, yes. For instance, the freshness and the aliveness of a newborn child, it's very easy to see the beauty of that because there's no contamination. Time has not entered that child's body yet.
So they're emanating beauty.
They're emanating their natural way
their
of
life.
Exactly.
Life.
That's the way we are intended, if there's such a word as intended, to live. That's the way a real live human being. That's what life is supposed to be. If you allow the word, boy, when you use English to talk, it's absolutely crazy to use English to talk.
We have a distorted view. We're getting off the subject of time, but we have a polluted view of what is beautiful.
To begin with, yes, and
But
even beautiful is a time kind of thing.
We learn that.
Yeah, in order to know about the beauty of a sunset, what must you have had?
Moonrise?
No, the observation of a sunset.
Oh, so you observe it one time and then you see it again.
Then you see it. Yeah,
and then you say, well, that's beautiful, comparing it by what you remember.
Yeah, and there are folks, at least, probably me, was one of them. If somebody says what a beautiful sunset or sunrise that is, then somebody else comes along and says, what a beautiful person Miss America is. I look over and I see a sunrise. That's what beautiful is, isn't it? But at any rate, we didn't really get away from the conversation about time because time lives in language. And if we use language to describe it, then we are inside of time. So it's almost impossible thing to speak of because we're using history to describe now.
Does that work?
Well, it hasn't worked so far, but for anybody. There have been those who have been able to point, but people don't realize that pointing is pointing across a chasm. When you point at something, for instance, you say, you. When you point at the word you, you're pointing across a chasm from the word you, which isn't real, there is no you, but you're pointing across a chasm to what?
Perhaps a person who's...
To the person who is real.
On the other side of the chasm, or just
yes,
here?
That person is on the other side of the chasm from the word you, because you is in time. So it's an illusion, there is no you. But that which it's pointing towards, that which the word you points towards, is real, because that
I'm not sure I follow that.
Don't follow it, just listen. Now see what's happening there is you're using time, you're trying to figure this out, what I'm saying. You say I'm not following you and I'm trying to understand. That's living inside of time to see if you can catch something that's being spoken about from outside of time. And it can't be understood.